with the Kirby Stone for. I should have delivered a message right away because the chief usher told me that out in the lobbies, somebody lost and he found a dollar bill, so if there's anybody in the audience.
Ed Sullivan was a well-known figure who created the Ed Sullivan Show, a groundbreaking platform that introduced countless musicians and rock bands to a wider audience, boosting their popularity. Known for his no-nonsense approach, Ed was committed to keeping his show respectful and family-friendly. But behind the scenes, there was one singer he simply couldn't stand and didn't try to hide his feelings. Could it be that this singer's unique style or way of performing is what sparked Ed's strong reaction? Join us as we find out. Ed Sullivan couldn't stand Jim Morrison, and he didn't hide it. On September 17, 1967, The Doors, an up-and-coming rock band with a wild sound and rebellious spirit, were invited to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show. This wasn't just a performance, it was a major break, as the show was broadcast across America and known for launching music careers. The Doors were already climbing the charts, led by their moody and unpredictable frontman, Jim Morrison. Their debut album was taking off, and their explosive single, Light My Fire, was becoming a national hit. But behind the scenes, tension quickly built. During rehearsals, a CBS executive delivered a clear message from the top. The band had to change the line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," from Light My Fire. The concern was the word higher, which might sound like it referred to substances, something the network and Ed Sullivan didn't want associated with the show. The band gave a nod of agreement, but Morrison secretly had no intention of obeying the request. Then came the live show. Under the bright studio lights and in front of millions, Jim Morrison walked up to the microphone and sang the original lyrics, clear and proud. It was a deliberate act of defiance. He had made up his mind to perform the song his way, refusing to censor his words for anyone. The act didn't just cross a line, it enraged Ed Sullivan, who immediately took it as a personal insult. Though the band finished their performance without further issue, the damage was already done. Ed Sullivan, known for his rigid rules and serious personality, didn't try to hide how angry he was. He didn't shake hands with the band, didn't thank them, didn't smile, and refused to even acknowledge Jim Morrison directly. In that moment, it was clear. Ed Sullivan couldn't stand him, and he didn't care who knew it. The Doors had been scheduled to appear 6 more times on The Ed Sullivan Show. Those offers were immediately canceled. Ed Sullivan was so offended by Morrison's actions that he banned the band for life, something he rarely did. He had hosted plenty of stars before, but Jim Morrison struck a nerve that Sullivan never forgave. News of the incident spread fast. Some saw Morrison's move as heroic, refusing to bow to TV rules. Others thought it was arrogant and disrespectful. But the media quickly zeroed in on one thing: the way Ed Sullivan reacted. His icy treatment of Morrison became just as famous as the performance itself. From that point on, the Doors leaned further into their role as rebels. Their concerts got wilder, their songs more provocative, and Morrison's behavior more chaotic. And even as some criticized them, their fans loved them for it. Being banned by Ed Sullivan only made them more iconic to the youth who were looking for something raw and real. So even though The Ed Sullivan Show had the power to boost a career, the Doors didn't need it. Their fame only grew, and Jim Morrison, fiery, fearless, and unfiltered, walked away as the man who sang what he wanted and paid the price. Ed Sullivan made it obvious how much he disliked Morrison, but in the end, that only helped cement the singer's place in rock history. Was Jim Morrison the one singer Ed Sullivan truly couldn't stand? And what made him react so strongly? Stay tuned to find out. Ed Sullivan couldn't stand Elvis Presley, the feud that shook TV. Ed Sullivan had a well-known disagreement with the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, during Elvis's appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show. The tension between them came from their different beliefs, personalities, and ways of life. Ed Sullivan was a traditional man who wanted to keep his show clean, respectful, and suitable for families to enjoy together. Elvis Presley, on the other hand, was a bold and revolutionary artist whose lively dance moves and powerful musical style were considered rebellious and shocking at the time. At first, Sullivan didn't want Elvis on his show because he worried that the way Elvis danced was too suggestive and might upset older, more conservative viewers. But Sullivan also realized how incredibly popular Elvis was and how much younger audiences adored him, so he eventually agreed to have him perform. When Elvis and Sullivan met on the show, things didn't go smoothly. Sullivan, who was calm and serious in his manner, had a hard time connecting with Elvis's outgoing and playful personality, and he even felt a little uncomfortable around him. Elvis, who was used to being energetic and free while performing, probably felt limited by the strict rules and stiff setup of Sullivan's show. Ed Sullivan, the host, was no stranger to controversy. He had famously clashed with Elvis about his hip shaking and had also argued with the Doors over their use of bad language. But he also understood the importance of staying in tune with new trends and keeping younger viewers interested, since they made up a big part of his audience. This created a tricky situation for Sullivan. On one hand, he didn't want to offend older viewers and TV executives, but on the other hand, he didn't want to turn away the younger fans who were drawn to exciting stars like the Rolling Stones. When Elvis Presley burst onto the scene, he quickly became the center of attention. His mix of different music styles and his thrilling stage presence, especially his hip movements, sent shockwaves through American society. To many people, Elvis's performances seemed shocking. They believed he was a bad influence on young people and was going against traditional values. In 1956, he was invited to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, and this became a major turning point in his career. Elvis's first appearance on the show was a massive event, with a record-breaking 60 million people watching from home. It made him an even bigger star. But it was his third and final appearance that became one of the most talked-about moments in television history. On January 6, 1957, Presley performed several of his hit songs, including the already famous Hound Dog. As he sang, he began shaking his hips in a way that was considered too suggestive and inappropriate by many at the time. The TV crew quickly zoomed in on Elvis's face to hide his body movements, but by then, it was too late. The audience in the studio screamed and cheered wildly, and people at home were either shocked or thrilled by what they saw. The performance caused a split across the country. Some admired Elvis's charisma and energy, while others criticized his dancing as vulgar and offensive. Ed Sullivan, who had strict ideas about what was acceptable on TV, was furious that Elvis didn't follow the rules. He swore that Elvis would never appear on his show again. But ironically, the controversy only made Elvis even more famous. He became a symbol of rebellion and a pop culture hero who wasn't afraid to challenge the rules or shake up society's expectations. Elvis Presley's performances on The Ed Sullivan Show were more than just big moments in his life. They changed music and television forever. He pushed the boundaries of what could be shown on TV, opening the door for future artists to express themselves freely and shift American pop culture. The uproar over his hip-shaking performance of Hound Dog showed the deep gap between younger and older generations in 1950s America. Teenagers saw Elvis as a bold rebel and admired him, while many adults viewed him as a bad example and a sign of moral decline. In many ways, the argument over Elvis's dancing reflected the bigger cultural shifts that would grow stronger in the 1960s, as America faced tough questions about race, gender, and social change. Despite their differences, Elvis's performances on The Ed Sullivan Show played a huge role in spreading his fame across the nation and helped him become one of the greatest names in music history. Even if Ed Sullivan wasn't always warm to every musician, were there any artists or bands whose careers he really helped? Keep watching to find out. The Beatles' Ed Sullivan Show, the night that changed music forever. On February 9, 1964, the Beatles made their first appearance on American television, performing in front of a record-breaking audience of 73 million viewers. This was the first of 3 pre-recorded performances on The Ed Sullivan Show. At first glance, it might seem like just another historic moment, but when seen through a cultural lens, it stands as one of the most powerful events of the 20th century, right alongside Bob Dylan going electric, Elvis Presley's comeback special, Woodstock, the launch of MTV, and Live Aid. The popularity of the Beatles tends to rise and fall like the ocean tides. Every decade or so, a new generation discovers their music, often through a re-release, a new documentary, or a tribute that brings them back into the public spotlight. While the Beatles weren't the first teen heartthrobs to win over young audiences, Cement certainly wouldn't be the last. The wave of excitement known as Beatlemania, intensified by their Ed Sullivan debut, remains unmatched. From the start, John, Paul, George, and Ringo were inspired by American rhythm and blues and early rock and roll artists like Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran, musicians who were often more popular in the UK than they were in their home country. By 1963, the Beatles were already massive stars across the UK and Europe, but their biggest dream was to conquer America. At the time, no British band had truly broken into the US market, but then again, there had never been a band quite like the Beatles. The idea to feature the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show came from Peter Pritchard, a European talent scout and friend of their manager, Brian Epstein. At first, the show's producers showed little interest. They doubted that American audiences would care about 4 mop-haired young men from Liverpool. But that changed in October 1963, when someone from the show happened to pass through Heathrow Airport and witnessed a massive crowd of fans eagerly waiting for the band to return from tour. That person was Ed Sullivan himself. After seeing that frenzy, Sullivan agreed to book them on his New York-based show in February. In the following months, the Beatles' songs began playing on American radio stations, and they quickly captured the hearts of millions with their catchy, upbeat pop-rock sound. By January 1964, their first U.S. single, I Want to Hold Your Hand, had already climbed to #1 on the American charts. When the band landed at the newly renamed John F. Kennedy International Airport on February 7th, thousands of screaming fans were there to welcome them. Before the taping of the show, filmed at Studio 50 in Manhattan, CBS received over 50,000 ticket requests, but the theater only had room for 728 people. That night, the Beatles performed All My Loving, Till There Was You, I Saw Her Standing There, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, marking the moment British music officially arrived in America. Soon afterward, bands like the Zombies, the Animals, the Kinks, the Who, and the Rolling Stones followed in the Beatles' footsteps. The doors the Beatles had pushed open were now fully wide, never to be closed again. John, Paul, George, and Ringo had achieved what once seemed impossible. They were embraced by the country whose music had originally inspired them. Just 2 months later, the Beatles held all 5 of the top spots on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Within the first 3 months of 1964, 60% of all records sold in the U.S. were Beatles albums. British record producer Peter Asher, who knew the band before they rose to fame, once joked, "It's one of the all-time great tricks. We copied your music, added our own twist, and sold it back to you." Music historians view the Beatles' appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show as more than just the start of the British invasion. It was the spark of a cultural shift. It helped ignite a growing counterculture movement, one that challenged the norms of mainstream society. The Beatles were only in their early 20s, yet most of their fans were even younger, enthusiastic, outspoken, and mostly female. Because of this, some people dismissed them as just another teen craze, like Elvis Presley or Ricky Nelson. But something deeper was happening. A divide between generations was becoming more visible. It was the first moment when the older generation truly sensed that the baby boomers were stepping forward, ready to question the rules and push for change. That rebellious spirit would define the culture of the 1960s, fueling protests against war and inspiring the fight for civil rights. That night's performance also had a lasting effect on future musicians. Artists from all musical genres, such as Gene Simmons, Nancy Wilson, Tom Petty, Mark Mothersbaugh, and Billy Joel, have all said that watching the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show made them want to become musicians themselves. The performance has been honored, recreated, and parodied by artists from Outkast to Boygenius. Times may change. Music tastes and styles may evolve. But again and again, the world always finds its way back to the Beatles. Let's explore what made The Ed Sullivan Show so special and why it mattered. The Ed Sullivan Show, a cultural time capsule. The Ed Sullivan Show was a popular American television variety show that aired on CBS from June 20, 1948 to March 28, 1971. Hosted by Ed Sullivan, a well-known entertainment columnist from New York, the show became a major part of American pop culture. When it ended in 1971, it was replaced later that September by the CBS Sunday Night Movie. In 2002, TV Guide ranked The Ed Sullivan Show at number 15 on its list of the 50 greatest TV shows of all time. Later, in 2013, the series was ranked number 31 on TV Guide magazine's list of the 60 best series of all time. From 1948 until its cancellation in 1971, the show aired on CBS every Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It became one of the few shows in history to remain in the same time slot on the same network for over 2 decades, although during its first season, it aired from 9 to 10 p.m. ET. The show featured an incredible range of entertainment, including classical musicians, opera singers, popular recording artists, songwriters, comedians, ballet dancers, dramatic actors performing monologues, and even circus performers. The format was very much like traditional vaudeville, which had mostly faded by then, but Sullivan continued to showcase many performers from that era on his stage. The show was originally co-created and produced by Marlo Lewis and was first called Toast of the Town. Even though that was its official name, many people casually referred to it as The Ed Sullivan Show long before it was officially renamed on September 25, 1955. On the premiere episode that aired on June 20, 1948, the lineup included comedy duo Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, singer Monica Lewis, and the famous Broadway songwriting pair Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II, who performed songs from their upcoming musical South Pacific, which debuted on Broadway in 1949. Between 1948 and 1962, the show's main sponsor was the Lincoln Mercury division of the Ford Motor Company. During this period, Ed Sullivan often read live advertisements promoting Mercury automobiles right on the air. The show was first broadcast live from CBS TV Studio 51, also known as the Maxine Elliott Theater, located at Broadway and 39th Street in New York City. It later moved to CBS TV Studio 50 at 1697 Broadway on 53rd Street, which became its permanent home. In June 1968, the building was renamed the Ed Sullivan Theater to honor the show's 20th anniversary. The final original episode, number 1068, aired on March 28, 1971, featuring guests Melanie, Joanna Simon, Danny Davis, and the Nashville Brass, and Sandler and Young. The show was among many older programs removed that summer because they didn't appeal to the younger viewers advertisers were targeting. This major shift in TV programming came just before the new primetime access rule went into effect in the fall. Although new episodes ended in March, reruns continued to air until June 6, 1971. In addition to bringing fresh talent to the screen each week, Ed Sullivan also featured recurring characters that appeared frequently throughout the seasons. One fan favorite was Topo Gigio, a lovable Italian puppet mouse who first appeared on December 9, 1962. Another regular was the talented ventriloquist Senor Wences, who made his debut on the show on December 31st, 1950. While most of the episodes were broadcast live from New York City, there were special episodes aired live from other countries, including the United Kingdom, Australia, and Japan. For many years, The Ed Sullivan Show was a weekly national tradition, and it often served as the first opportunity for international performers to be introduced to the American public. When the show marked its 10th anniversary in June 1958, Ed Sullivan gave a special interview published by the Newspaper Enterprise Association, where he spoke about how the show had evolved over the years. Since The Ed Sullivan Show had such a big impact, who was Ed Sullivan, and what's the real story behind the man? Keep watching to find out. From Harlem to Broadway, the Sullivan Story. Sullivan was born on September 28, 1901, in Harlem, New York City, to Elizabeth F. née Smith and Peter Arthur Sullivan, who worked at a customs house. He had a twin brother, Daniel, who was very sickly and tragically lived only a few months. Sullivan was raised in Port Chester, New York, where the family lived in a modest red brick home at 53 Washington Street. Of Irish descent, his family shared a deep love for music, often gathering to play the piano, sing, and listen to phonograph records together. Sullivan proved to be a remarkable athlete in high school, earning 12 athletic letters at Port Chester High School. He excelled in football as a halfback, basketball as a guard, and sprinting on the track team. As a catcher and captain of the baseball team, he led them to multiple championship victories. Reflecting on his youth, Sullivan noted that New York high school sports were naturally integrated, with players of all races competing together. He recalled traveling to Connecticut, where he encountered teams with black players, something considered perfectly normal at the time. These early experiences deeply shaped his belief in the equality and worthiness of black athletes as competitors and people. Sullivan's journalism career began at the Port Chester Daily Item, a local newspaper where he had already contributed sports stories while still in high school. After graduation, he joined the paper full-time. In 1919, he moved to the Hartford Post, but it closed during his first week there. Undeterred, he became a sports reporter for the New York Evening Mail. When that paper ceased operations in 1923, Sullivan moved between several news outlets, including the Associated Press, the Philadelphia Bulletin, the Morning World, the Morning Telegraph, the New York Bulletin, and the Leader. In 1927, he secured a position at the New York Evening Graphic as a sports writer and was soon promoted to sports editor. In 1929, following Walter Winchell's departure from the Daily Mirror, Sullivan stepped into the role of Broadway columnist for the New York Evening Graphic. Soon after, he left to join New York's largest tabloid, the New York Daily News. There, his column, Little Old New York, captured the vibrant world of Broadway shows and gossip. Sullivan also branched into radio, delivering show business news broadcasts that further boosted his profile. In 1933, he wrote and starred in the film Mr. Broadway, which took viewers on a tour of New York's lively nightclubs, introducing them to entertainers and celebrities. Sullivan quickly rose to become a powerful and influential figure in the entertainment world, standing as one of Walter Winchell's fiercest rivals. He established the El Morocco nightclub as his unofficial base of operations, a spot just a stone's throw from Winchell's domain at the Stork Club. Sullivan maintained his column at the New York Daily News throughout his radio career, and his popularity eventually outlasted Winchell's. In a notable moment of reconciliation during the late 1960s, Sullivan publicly praised Winchell's legacy in a magazine interview, helping to mend their long-standing rivalry. Beyond his role as a columnist, Sullivan was actively involved in the entertainment scene. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, he produced vaudeville shows, where he also performed as the master of ceremonies. He directed a radio program on the original WABC station and organized benefit shows to support various charitable causes. These diverse endeavors helped solidify Sullivan's place as a multi-talented figure in both journalism and entertainment. Beyond Ed Sullivan's fame and success, was there a hidden side to the man that few ever knew? Stay tuned to find out. Ed Sullivan's hidden side. People close to Ed Sullivan, like his daughter Betty and grandson Rob, have shown that he was a much more complicated and serious person than most people think. Betty has talked in many interviews about her father's well-known bad temper. She said Ed would get very angry over small things or when he felt insulted, but he never used violence. His anger was strong and could be scary. One clear example of his quick temper happened at home when Ed found a broken window. He thought neighborhood kids had broken it, so he angrily went outside to confront them. But it turned out the window was broken by a stray ball while his own daughter was playing. This story shows how fast Ed got mad and how he often made quick guesses before knowing all the facts. Betty also shared that her father's strong suspicion affected her personal life. When she started dating a young man, Ed believed her boyfriend might support communism. Because of this, Ed looked into the young man's past and even hired a private detective to check him out. In the end, Ed's worries were wrong, but this caused problems between him and Betty and left a lasting effect on their relationship. It's important to know that Ed Sullivan's fear of communism was common in the United States during the 1950s and early 1960s, a time when many people were watched closely for their political beliefs. Even though Ed was very famous and liked on TV, he was known to be quiet and shy when not working. Betty said he liked to be alone and often spent time by himself in his study instead of being with others. This quiet side was a big part of who he was and surprised many people who only knew him as a lively TV host. His shyness wasn't just at home, it was also true at work. Many co-workers said Ed kept to himself and did not enjoy casual talks. While he acted professional with others, he rarely had friendly chats or showed warmth, keeping most relationships purely business. Apart from his career and private side, did Ed Sullivan have a family? What was his life like away from the spotlight? Stay tuned to find out. Ed Sullivan's life and family. Sullivan was once engaged to champion swimmer Sybil Bauer, but tragically, she passed away from cancer in 1927 at the young age of 23. In 1926, Sullivan met Sylvia Weinstein and began dating her. Initially, Sylvia told her family she was seeing a Jewish man named Ed Sullivan. However, her brother soon discovered that the man was actually Sullivan, who was Catholic. Both families strongly opposed their relationship due to their differing religious backgrounds, which caused their relationship to experience several interruptions over the next 3 years. Eventually, they married on April 28, 1930, in a modest City Hall ceremony. 8 months later, Sylvia gave birth to their daughter Elizabeth, affectionately known as Betty, named in honor of Sullivan's mother, who had died earlier that year. In 1952, Betty married Bob Precht, the producer of The Ed Sullivan Show. By 1944, the Sullivans had rented a suite of rooms at the Hotel Delmonico, after having lived for many years at the Hotel Astor on Times Square. Sullivan rented a suite adjacent to the family's living quarters, which he used as his personal office until The Ed Sullivan Show ended in 1971. After each broadcast, Sullivan would routinely call his wife to seek her thoughts and feedback on the program. The Sullivans were well-known fixtures in New York City's most prestigious clubs and restaurants, frequenting spots such as the Stork Club, Danny's Hideaway, and Jimmy Kelly's. Sullivan counted celebrities and U.S. presidents among his friends and was even granted audiences with several popes throughout his lifetime. Sylvia Sullivan served as a financial advisor for her husband. Sadly, she passed away on March 16, 1973, at Mount Sinai Hospital due to a ruptured aorta. In the fall of 1965, CBS began broadcasting its weekly programs in color. While The Ed Sullivan Show aired live in the Central and Eastern time zones, It was taped for later broadcast in the Pacific and Mountain Time zones. Selected excerpts have since been released on home video and uploaded to the official Ed Sullivan Show YouTube channel. By 1971, the show's ratings had significantly declined. As part of an effort to revamp its lineup, CBS canceled The Ed Sullivan Show in March 1971, along with several other long-running programs in what became known as the Rural Purge. Frustrated by the decision, Sullivan refused to host the final 3 months of scheduled episodes. Instead, special editions featuring guest hosts aired until May 1971, followed by reruns through June. Sullivan recorded a farewell message for the last rerun, formally announcing the show's departure from its iconic Sunday night time slot. Despite the show's end, he remained with CBS in various capacities and hosted a 25th anniversary special in June 1973. In early September 1974, Sullivan was diagnosed with advanced esophageal cancer. Doctors gave him only a short time to live, but his family chose to keep the diagnosis from him. A lifelong smoker, Sullivan believed his health issues were simply complications related to a long-standing battle with stomach ulcers. He passed away on October 13, 1974, at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York. His funeral, held at St. Patrick's Cathedral, was attended by approximately 2,000 people on a cold, rainy day. Sullivan was laid to rest in a crypt at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. What do you think about the singer Ed Sullivan couldn't stand? Were his reasons for disliking them really fair? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.